Alright y'all, we're back again today and we're making a build based on the patch 8 stress test for Baldur's Gate 3. Now mark this motherfucker because this build is going to be perfectly fine when the patch goes live. I'm not too worried about things being changed enough to affect how this build is going to operate overall. Now the way we're going to break down this video is we're going to go through the leveling process. We're going to stop at each act threshold. So act 1 generally around level 1 through 6. Then we're going to move to act 2. Basically 7, 8, 9, maybe 10 more so is what you get at the very end of Act 2. And then obviously we'll do the remaining levels at Act 3. And at every threshold, we'll go back and we'll kind of talk about the playstyle, what new additions you get, and maybe some changes you should be looking forward to. And also gear. Gear is a big part about this build. Usually I like to stray away from gear when it comes to builds just because I like to lay down a foundation for you to then work off of, or just kind of like change or tailor a build to like what you're picking up as far as your party composition. But no, for this build, very specific with the gear. So once we're done talking about the leveling process, we'll go over the gear and kind of give a complete overview of the build overall. So let's jump in game and get this video started. Now, starting off in game, the class we're going to go with is Druid. When it comes to the Druid cantrips, I would just stay away from guidance. We're already going to pick up guidance on our own. And then your ability points there, I would keep them towards dexterity, constitution, and wisdom. Wisdom is actually the big one there, and then probably followed by constitution. We really want to make sure we are securing our concentration saving throws. And then dexterity there is obviously just for higher initiative. And then if you want to dump, the rest into charisma or strength, that's not a bad idea either. Just stay away from intelligence, essentially. Strength. Now, strength can be important because I'm actually going to bring up another variation of this build as well at the end. And we'll kind of like blitz through that, and you can kind of just see like the overall kind of like theme and things you need to pick up. And it'll be very simple, but that's going to be more of a multi-class option. And this setup here that what we're going to go through is going to be pretty straightforward. But just know when we get to Act 3, yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can play this build. But the core thing for this video is going to be Druid and the subclass we're going to pick up. So we're going to go ahead and move on to level 2. Now at level 2, we're going to pick Circle of the Stars. This is the new Druid subclass and it is amazing. Now, when we pick up this subclass, we're going to get the cantrip guidance. So that's why we didn't pick it up at level 1. But we also get both or 2 variations of Guiding Bolt. You get the normal Guiding Bolt that costs a regular spell slot. Guiding Bolt is a really good single target spell, just in general, by the way. But then we also get these resource points, star maps, and then we can use those resource points to cast Guiding Bolt without a spell slot. I don't want to beat around the bush with this one. This is really strong in the early game because one of the biggest issues with spellcasters is just how limited they are in just like that Act 1. You run out of spell slots all the time. Not a lot of people like basically hoard scrolls to use scrolls in the Act 1, which is what you should be doing as a spellcaster, by the way. For this build, it kind of gets solved all on its own because of, well, right here with these 2 guiding bolts, you can throw a lot of guiding bolts. But then also our subclass action here. So we pick up starry forms and we get 3 starry forms. We'll talk about Chalice first. Chalice is like a support, a healer one. You have to use a healing spell and then you get a free action basically to do another heal. It's okay. That's not what we really want to focus on. We want to focus on the starry form Archer and Dragon. When you choose one of these forms, you then get a free bonus action, not a free bonus action, you get a free offensive option, I should say, for your bonus action, which for a spellcaster, that is huge. I feel like, again, something else spellcasters struggle with is doing something with your bonus action. The way I always used to get around it is the sorcerer just using meta magic quickened. But right here, Druid, level 2, oh, we already have that problem solved. And so the archer form is going to give us luminous arrow, and then the dragon breath. So this will basically ensure that we cannot roll lower than a 10 for our constitution saving throws. And yes, that means for our concentration spells. In addition to that, we get Dazzling Breath, which is like this frontal cone AoE spell, kind of like Burning Hands, but it does radiant damage. Big focus for this build is going to be radiant damage. In fact, it is the entire build. If it does radiant damage, we want it. So already at level 2, we are very strong. Other spells you can be picking up at level 2, I would just stick strictly to like utility, something like Long Strider, Enhanced Sleep, maybe Create or Destroy Water. Healing Word as well, that could be a good one. So something healing, just so you can, if you wanted to use that Chalice option for your starry form, You can. You got a lot of different options you can already do with this subclass as far as if you want to be like a support or you want to do like offensive spell damage. So let's quickly move on to level 3. We're just going to highlight the major things you should be picking up. So if I skip over something, just know it's up to you to kind of fill in those slots depending on what you think your party's kind of lacking. So at level 3, the only thing we need to worry about picking up is Moonbeam. This is going to be, I would say, our first concentration spell that we're going to maybe want to focus on. And of course our puppy comes to say hi. Go say hi, yeah. We'll go on a walk later. Same time every day. Same time every day. All right. So we then can move on to level 4. Level 4, the only thing that we're going to need to talk about here is the feat you need to pick up. There's only 2 different feats we're going to go for, and that is ability improvement, and probably want to dump that into wisdom, and then also alert. When you take alert is either probably going to be for your 2nd or 3rd feat. Just at level 4 here in the beginning, I would go with bumping up your wisdom. So we can completely skip over level 5. I don't think there's really anything crucial as far as the build is concerned. So moving on to level 6, we pick up Cosmic Omens and we get Wheel and Woe. Now, if you get Wheel, it's going to be like a more support option for your Cosmic Omen charges, or you're going to get Woe, which is going to be more of a debuff option for the enemies, obviously. So now we can pause and kind of talk about Act 1. What are you going to be doing? Well, you have great options. You're either going to pick Archery or you're going to pick Dragon for your starry form. So that's going to give you a bonus action basically to do a more spell damage for free, by the way. You only have to use your wild shape charge to get into that form, and then you're just in that form until you dismiss it and then pick another form. So once you have your starry form, you're basically free to just use as many like guiding bolts as you want or moonbeam. And you really want to stick to radiant damage, and that's because of the gear. So in Act 1, you want to make sure you pick up the luminous armor. You want to make sure you pick up the boots of stormy clamor. You want to make sure you pick up the holy lance helm. You can also pick up the gloves of belligerent skies. And then there's a few weapons like the shining staver of skulls or the blood of Lathander. Those are 2 maces, very good. Staver of Skulls actually does radiant damage inherently. I will link in the description down below and break it down by act as far as which gear you should be looking for and kind of probably the order you're going to run into them. But again, we'll go more over that at the end. So let's move on to Act 2, and that would be level 7 through 10-ish. So back to the leveling, and we're going to hit level 7. Level 7, I would just pick up one of the either being able to summon a woodland being or a minor elemental, because we're going to have some spell slots basically available because using our star maps, and then our bonus action with either of your starry form abilities, and then moving around Moonbeam if you choose to do that. So a lot of different ways to avoid using a lot of spell slots with this. So we can move on to level 8, where we will pick up our next feat. And again, either ability improvement to bump up wisdom. We want to make sure wisdom is high as possible, or go with alert. That is just kind of up to you. With my builds, I like to ensure that we always have 2 feats to work with, so you can't go wrong with either one of those. Now, level 9, pick whatever you want. Nothing important here. And then level 10. This is where we get Twinkling Constellation. This is when your Luminous Arrow gets a damage bump. Your Healing from the Chalice also gets a healing bump as far as the dice. And then your dragon form, actually, you get the ability to fly. And then that Dazzling Breath, even though it doesn't say it in the tooltips at the moment, they'll probably fix that. You get more damage with that as well. Now, something to note, if this is the live version, Twinkling Constellation right now lets you freely change between your starry forms without using a wild shape charge. And they had some patch notes come out that said that shouldn't be the case. You should be having to use your resource. But as it is right now in the patch, yeah, you can still freely change between these forms. So I'm going to kind of avoid talking about that too much because I don't know how it's going to be in the live version. But either way, it doesn't really affect the build overall. But as far as talking about Act 2, what is really different? Well, we do get the ability to summon an ally if you want. You don't have to. It's just we have some free spell slots that you're going to be able to play with. So that could be an option. We just picked up our 2nd feat. Other than that, you're just it's just business as usual as far as Act 1. Gear-wise, you want to pick up the Horsecation Ring, the Luminous Gloves, the Thunderskin Cloak, that one's a big one, and then the Spine Shudder Amulet, and then the Callous Glow Ring. We have the entire kit, by the way, now as gear. You are good to go because now you are basically a Radiant Orb spreading machine that's going to then feed back into reverberations. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the overview section, but just know, gear-wise, we are set, we are good to go. So let's move on to Act 3, and that's going to be level 11. Now, level 11, we get Sunbeam. Pick up Sunbeam. This is kind of going to replace using Moonbeam. The only thing is this is a level 6 spell slot. So you're not going to be able to use that encounter after encounter. It's going to be more of a, hey, if you just want to melt the field, here you go. And then level 12, kind of just pick up what you need as far as alert or just more wisdom. Now, something like Warcaster can be an option here, but because our starry form dragon ensures that we cannot roll lower than a 10 or our constitution saving throws, I don't think Warcaster is as important. But if you're going to say stick strictly in the constellation, the starry form archer, maybe consider Warcaster then, but that's kind of up to you. But that's a leveling process. Let's just go ahead and move to the overview section where we can kind of talk about these radiant orbs and reverberation and what the heck do they do. Now, in the overview section here, biggest thing about this build is radiant orbs and reverberation. Now, what do radiant orbs do? Well, the effective targets whoever you hit with radiant damage has a -1 to attack rolls. And in addition to that, you then get to light up an area. It has like that illuminating effect on the target. It's like this little bright light on top of their head. And radiant orb can stack up to 10 times. I think in the stress test at the moment, I got it up to 16, so I don't know if that's working as intended. But in the normal live game, I think the max is 10 stacks. So that's -10 to attack rolls. That's huge. So dispersing radiant orbs, it basically helps out your entire party. Or if you're running solo, it means keeping everybody safe because your enemy is going to miss or have a good chance of missing. But let's talk about the other condition that's also very important for this build, and that is reverberation. So affected targets have -1 to strength, dexterity, and constitution saving throws. And like radiant orbs, these stack. So when a target has 5 or more reverberations, it takes 1d4 thunder damage and then must succeed a dice check of 10 for the constitution or they will fall prone. If they fall prone, boom, that's it for their turn. So those are all really fancy there, Mr. Nomad. How the hell does that work for us? That's why we're going to talk about gear. And the first piece of equipment we're going to talk about is the luminous armor. You get this very early on in Act 1, and this armor reads, when the wearer deals radiant damage, which we are all about radiant damage, they cause radiant shockwave. And so radiant shockwave is inflict radiating orbs in a 3-meter radius. So it's kind of like you hit a target with radiant damage, and then it does like a small like AoE of if anybody's in the area, they also get radiant orbs put on them. And then next up, let's talk about Boots of Stormy Clamor. When the wearer inflicts a condition on an enemy, they are also inflicted with 2 turns of reverberation. And that condition that we're inflicting is radiant orbs. So maybe you're starting to see the feedback loop here as far as spread some radiant orbs. Well, guess what? Reverberation gets put on them as well. Next up, we have the Holy Lance Helm. Creatures who miss their attack rolls against the wearer must make a dexterity saving throw or take 1d4 radiant damage. So remember, with reverberation, they have a -1, depending on how many stacks they have, of dexterity saving throw. This starts to become a very, very nasty feedback loop for the enemies. You can actually just move away from them, have them proc their opportunity strike on you, good chance they'll miss, and boom, they just hurt themselves, not to mention maybe anybody that's around them as far as the enemy team. This is a very, very fun and powerful playstyle. And the next piece of equipment, we're going to talk about the Gloves of Belligerent Skies. So when the wearer deals thunder damage, lightning damage, or radiant damage, they also inflict 2 turns of reverberation. So again, feeds back into that loop every time we do radiant damage, or if they fail one of their saving throws, they're going to take thunder damage. And those pieces of equipment we just talked about, that's all Act 1 stuff. Let's talk about the Act 2 pieces of gear that you're going to be picking up. Now the first one, probably the Coruscation Ring. Now this one reads, when the wearer deals spell damage while illuminated by a light source, they also inflict radiating orbs upon the target for 2 turns. Like we mentioned about radiating orbs, when you inflict somebody with a radiating orb, they get that little light above their head. So this, again, just feeds into the playstyle. We then have something like the Luminous Gloves that you can pick up. When the wearer deals radiant damage, they also receive 2 turns of radiating orbs. So it's really between Luminous Gloves and Gloves of Belligerent Skies. Do you want more reverberation or do you want more radiant damage? This one's kind of up to you. You do get an option when it comes to your gloves. Both are good. It's just kind of up to you. And really quick, the last pieces of equipment we'll talk about is the Thunderskin Cloak. So when a creature with reverberation deals damage to the wearer, the creature must then make a Constitution saving throw or become dazed. Now, reverberation hurts Constitution saving throws, so there's a good chance when a creature attacks you, they're going to daze themselves. Again, very much locking down enemies when they attack you. It's almost like a very good tank class as well, if you want to think about it that way. Other than that, the Callous Glow Ring, this just says you get 2 more damage when like in an illuminated area, but because we're spreading so many radiating orbs, entire area is going to be lit up. So it's basically just free 2 damage. That ring is not necessary for this build. Damage like overall for this build, not really necessary because we're just doing so many conditions as far as that feedback loop of radiating orbs and reverberation, and that like locks down the enemy in this like really nasty damaging loop that an extra 2 damage, maybe not necessary. Maybe give this to one of your other party members. But now since we've covered the gear, hopefully you can see basically this playstyle of all the Radiant spells, why we picked them up, and how they're going to work and synergize with radiating orbs and reverberation. Now, I mentioned another variation to this build, and I would say this other one is more martial focused. This would be the more closer to, I guess, the OG, the original way to play the radiating orb style in the live version right now. So the martial variation of this build would be 5 levels into Paladin, pick up Oath of Vengeance for Inquisitor's Might. It basically just gives you radiant damage on any weapon you want, so you can use whatever the heck you want. And then we're going to pick up something like Divine Smite, which is just more radiant melee damage, kind of makes this more of a punchier character. And then we go to level 5 for that extra attack. Feat wise, you take everything that we already listed in the video, and then we would pick up 5 levels into Cleric, and we'd pick up Light Domain for Radiance of Dawn, which is basically this huge radiant damage AoE that you can do that comes back on short rest because of your divinity charge. And the big thing about 5 levels into Cleric is Spirit Guardians. And Spirit Guardians is like the ultimate form for this build because you can move around a lot, you're applying all those conditions. When you move away, there's a good chance, again, they start that feedback loop. Anybody in your area is going to get hit with more radiant damage. It's really, really strong. And of course, my dog wants to chew on her bone at the very end of the video. I'm going to hold it here until she's done, or else you're going to hear her going. And so we have 5 and 5. We have 5 Paladin, 5 Cleric. And then the last 2 levels, I would take Circle the Stars Druid. And that way you go to your starry form, and then you have a bonus action to spread more and more radiant damage. So Circle of Stars is essentially like the linchpin in this build variation compared to my Radiant Knight build. That's why I call this one the Circle of Radiance build. Anyways, that's the build overall. Hopefully you guys can see how gosh dang strong this build is. And so definitely bookmark this for when the build goes live, because this is going to be a similar way to play that Radiant gear build, but now has a different flavor. And again, the cornerstone of this one is that Circle of Stars with your starry form and having that bonus action to spread more radiant damage. Again, we're not actually worried about the damage values because the conditions that we're applying in that feedback loop is so dang strong. But that's the build, that's the video. I don't think I'm probably going to make any more patch 8 stress test videos because I would be more concerned about the builds that I talk about being like evergreen. I want them to basically be good for the entire game. And I don't know how a lot of these are going to come out during live, or I'm kind of worried about how they would come out live. But this variation, it's very safe that this is going to be working as intended. So I'm not worried about this one. But so next build's probably just going to go back to the live version and the usual stuff there, because I still have plenty of builds and the base version at the moment that I want to talk about. So if you made it this far, thank you very much. I appreciate you. I'm going to go walk my dog, and I will see you next time. Peace and take care. Okay. Arr, good girl. All right, let's go on a walk.